This is the model 625 HD inch-and-a-half hand dredge from Golden Stiffer Products. Now, to protect the pumping mechanism, which is the HD power plant or the convoluted cylinder bellows, it's always good to have some kind of a protective cover over it. In this case, it's an inexpensive improvised cover that fits right over it and keeps it safe. Remove that when you want to use it as a hand dredge. Now, the HD power plant that sits on top of the Model 625, every time you pump up and down, you get about 32 ounces of exchange. You can pump a gallon of water through this pump really quick. 4 strokes. That's it, a gallon of water. That's how fast you can pump water through it. And it creates enough suction that it easily lifts gold. Now, this is the piping that comes with it. This is inch-and-a-half piping, 12 inches long, inch-and-a-quarter piping, also 12 inches long, and 1 inch piping, 12 inches long. And then this is 3 more of the same. Now, the way this gets assembled here is you can use it with the reducer bushings, or you can plug it in directly. Now, since this is only an inch-and-a-half hand dredge, it's actually 1 inch 625 thousandths, or 1 5/8. But inch-and-a-half material is about the maximum you should pump through it. Now, this is how it would look with the inch-and-a-half piping on there. If you want to extend the inch-and-a-half piping for a longer reach, you could put the coupling on it and add another section of inch-and-a-half pipe to give yourself 24 inches of reach. Now, that's a long way to lift gold with that big of piping, but you wouldn't have any trouble lifting a lot of rocks and sand and anything else that's in the way, you know, to get that out of the way, so you could use it like as an overburden pump. Now, the inch-and-a-half, or I should say the half-inch mesh seed nozzle, can go onto this here, and every time you plunge this down into the gravel and pull, it's going to lift probably everything but heavier gold right up into the pump. If you want, you could put the other extension on there and have it out 24 inches. You may still get fine gold, but you probably wouldn't be able to lift any nuggets that far up. They're pretty heavy. Specific gravity is like 19. Now, another thing is these smaller pipes here. To get these smaller pipes to fit into the end of the hand dredge, it would be necessary to use a series of reducer bushings, and then that would fit inside here. When you want to, like say, clean out a crevice, now here we're only starting with 24 inches of pipe, you know, but the Model 625 will go a lot deeper than 24 inches with 1 inch pipe. You could probably easily go 36 inches. So this here is how it's going to look with the 1 inch pipe on it. It'd be very good for crevicing. No problem pulling gold nuggets up through here. Now, another thing to take into consideration when using a Model 625 hand dredge is what you're going to be doing with it. If you're going to be doing a lot of shoveling and just using it for, you know, cleaning off the bedrock, making sure you don't leave anything behind on the bedrock, then inch-and-a-half hose would do fine. And the way you would plug the inch-and-a-half hose in would be directly to the discharge valve or discharge port. As such, you're plugged in, ready to pump material through. And then, for the opposite end of the hose, you have the spring clamp here and a fitting that you plug the other end of the discharge hose into. and then you're ready to clamp it to your slews or ready to clamp it to a bucket. Or if you want, you could just like maybe bring a sandbag along and just pump it directly into the sandbag, and then just take the sandbag up later and set it somewhere, you know, if you don't have enough buckets. Okay, if you're going to be pumping the full-size material through there, which is the 1.5 inch, probably the better option would be to go with the 2-inch hose. Now, the 2-inch hose, the hose adapter also has an end that'll plug right into the discharge valve. And since this is 2-inch hose, everything 1.5 inches that pumps through here is going to go right through the hose, and the chances of you getting any plug ups is going to be real marginal. Now, one thing you want to do when you're pumping is you want to make sure that you have the proper angle. Now, it says here that you want to keep this, you want to set the elbow level to the horizon. So level to the horizon would be with a pump right like this. Now, that's level to horizon. Maybe put a little bit of an angle on it like that. That way the discharge valve that's inside there, the flapper, it won't be like this and, you know, hang. And then you'll have to pull on the handle to close it. It'll kind of already be closed like this. And when you're pumping, you're more than likely going to have it in a position like this here. If you have it like this here, since this is the trap where all the stuff is, where all the material you're suctioning into the hand dredge is supposed to settle, you don't want to have it like this. You want to have it like this here. That way, when you pull the handle, everything that comes up into the dredge will have a greater tendency when it hits the top of the valve here to slide down into there and not cause a buildup over here. Now, no matter what, when you push down on the handle, it's going to push everything down into the bottom, and it will push it up. But if it falls back down inside there, the next time you pull your handle up, you're going to have all this stuff sitting on there. So you want to make sure that you have it like this. That way, as you're pumping, it drops down into there, and hopefully rounds bend and pumps out to the other side of the flapper. Now, the other valve flapper is right here. And for right now, when you're trying to set your elbow level to the horizon, you have this clamp here. There's a recess that's on the elbow. And what you want to do is you want to slide this clamp up until it sits on that recess and sits on this bumper right here, this friction bumper. And then when you get it in the position you want, then you snug it up. Okay. Now, it says here on this sticker, it says top. Now, what you want to do is you want to keep this on top, because inside here, your flapper is hinged to the discharge valve, the G valve down inside here. So if you keep this in a topmost position, that means that when your flapper valve opens, it'll open from the bottom and everything will flush under it. Whereas if you had it the other way around, everything would have to go up and over the top of it. So you always want to make sure that you keep it in this position here. Now, this is removable, so you can take that off and you can look inside there and you can see your flapper assembly inside there. Now, also, the good thing about the Model 625 is that the flappers are replaceable. The G valves can be removed. To remove the G valve, there are 3 screws around the edge here that go just over the lip of the G valve. Now, just for extra added safety, or I should say extra added protection when you're hand dredging, there's a small amount of ABS cement. This is your ABS cement right here. It's a plastic cement that goes along with this kind of pipe, ABS pipe, and it's a solvent weld. And what that does when you put it on there is it actually binds into the surface, or you know, it goes right into the surface of the plastic and melts its way in a little bit, and that way it adheres a lot better. It doesn't take very long to dry. A small little bead like this, maybe take a couple hours to dry, 2-3 hours to dry. A smaller bead, even less time than that. Now, you don't really need that under because it's got the screws to hold it in there. But when it comes to changing the valve, you would have to take these 3 screws out, and then you would have to dig this out or use a razor blade and slimly cut along that line there to get that to come out. Then you pull the G valve out. Now also, as part of the piping system, you have 2 different ways of using the 1.5" steel lined restrictor nozzle. Now the 1.5" steel lined restrictor nozzle, it keeps the material that you're suctioning in 1.5" and under in diameter. Longer is not a problem. It'll pump right through the dredge. I've never had any plug-ups inside the dredge yet. Okay, now the steel lined restrictor nozzle, there's an extra coupling that goes along with the steel lined restrictor nozzle, and what that would do is, if you want to use the 1.5" pipe here, you would put the 1.5" steel lined restrictor nozzle into that coupling, that special coupling, which on one side is the step is smaller than on the other side, so you put it in the side with the small step, that way it fits in there nice and tight, and then you'd place it on there, and then you'd insert it into the bottom of the pump. Into the bottom of the pump, like that. And then when you're hand dredging, the pipe is protected because that steel right there, everything hits that steel, and that's going to take all the impact damage right there, and that will take a long time to wear out. Who knows how long it'll take to wear out? That'll take a long time to wear out. And another way to do that, now of course here you're using bigger pipe, so when you pull the handle, you get less of a buildup of vacuum inside to the end of the nozzle. If you want to get a greater buildup of vacuum, then you would want to get that, and because of the way this is manufactured, it'll also, it's called a slit fit and a spigot fit. It'll fit right over the 1.25" pipe, and then what you would do from there is get the 1.25" bushing, reducer bushing, and you'd put that into the bottom of the pipe, or I should say into the bottom of the hand dredge, and there you go. So you figure if you're going to be doing 24 inches, hand dredging 24 inches down, you may want to switch to the 1.5", or I should say this is actually 1.25" pipe. They call it 1.25", but the inside of the pipe is actually about 1 inch 530 thousandths. You know, so you got about a 32nd of an inch clearance in there for the rocks that are going through. So if you wanted to extend it out to 24 inches, what you do is you put the coupling on it, put the other section of pipe in there, this one here, and then you'd put the steel lined restrictor nozzle on that, and then you'd have yourself the 24 inches of reach with the steel 1.5" steel lined restrictor nozzle. Okay, there we go. Now another tweak as I call it for the model 625, since I developed it, is something I call the Maxi Flow. Well, actually this is a really Maxi Flow elbow, and how that works is it's got that same step on there. You put that on here, then you adjust it into the position you want, tighten down the clamp, and you transfer the discharge valve over to that. Now see, this has a square elbow, so when you're pumping 1.5" material through, a lot of times the rocks that are larger than 1.5", you know, because of the larger than 1.5" will fit in, but long wise, they'll get stuck here, and then you'll have to pull it apart, you know, maybe more often than you want to. Go ahead and unplug it. Well, I found with this elbow here, that never happens. So you could change over. I mean, it's white. They don't come in black. It's PVC. The rest of the pump is ABS plastic. It's real light and it floats. So you get this on here like that, you know, and like it says, you have to make sure that you keep this on the top. And then if you're using the 2-inch hose, you know, I've had an entire day where I don't have one plug up doing it that way. You know, with the 1.5" hose and this elbow here, you know, I have multiple plug ups because I like to run full 1.5". You know, but if you're only going to use the 1-inch pipe, you know, this is not a problem. Or if you're going to use it with this, not a problem. You'll never get a plug up in there. Okay, now it comes to servicing the valves. Now, when you want to remove the G valve, what you'll have to do is you'll have to unscrew the coupling, and you'll have to remove these 3 small screws. There's 3 of them. And then there's a small little bead of ABS cement in here that I have to help keep it from moving around once G valve is pressed back in. You'll have to scrape this out, then the G valve will pull out. It'll look just like this one here, have the O-ring on it and everything. When you put it back together, just make sure that that door, this little door that opens right here, the hinge, make sure that it's in a position where when it opens, it's opposite this, like that there, with the fastener opposite that end. And it'll open the way it should open, and all the material will fall right through. This here is the other rubber. This is the cloth inserted rubber that goes inside the intake G valve. Now that there is the same thing. You have the G valve, it's got an O-ring on it. It's exactly the same thing, except it's got this cloth inserted rubber. Cloth inserted rubber is real thin, but it's real tough. Got a lot of cloth in here. It'll last a long time. Now, to make it last even longer, what I've designed is a little system here that not only adds to the rigidity so it doesn't get sucked through the hole, but also deflects the incoming rocks so that when they hit it, it doesn't destroy it. And the way I did that was with these deflector plates here. And then it's kind of like an assembly. You have a deflector plate that goes on the intake side, and you have a deflector plate that goes on the side where the rocks will be dropping down out of the material that you suck in, or suction in. And then it has a lock washer and a nut that goes on top of it. Tighten that down. If the screw is too long, tip the end of the screw, cut the end of the screw off. And then you've got these stainless steel fasteners. Stick those back through the holes. Hold it firmly in place, maybe on a flat surface. On a flat surface, hold it firmly in place, the fasteners, and then fold them over. Fold them over, one left, one right, one left, one right. And if you do it right, then there won't be, they won't be deeply embedded into the flapper, and there won't be a big gap under there either. And then that'll keep sand from getting into there, and your valve will work much better. Now, if you wanted to, you could go with one of these as well. If you went with one of these here for the intake, you would be able to pump a little bit larger material through it. Maybe, you know, like maybe even up to 1 5/8. And that way you could probably use the 1.5 inch pipe. But I would recommend going with the cloth inserted rubber and the deflector plates. When you're putting it back together, is you have a little a little trim line right here. So after you get it back onto the G valve and you get those fasteners in there, if there's any overhang at all, what you want to do is use a nail clippers. And with that nail clippers, you will go ahead and trim that excess that's hanging over. If there's any excess, you want to go ahead and trim that excess. That way when you go ahead and put it back in, when it bottoms out on the recess in the bottom of the pump, that won't be in your way. That's why you have to trim that off a little bit. If there's any interference at all, if this is hanging over enough that it's going to get in your way, you know, you can see there's like a little lip, the little recess that this edge fits on. So this right here, on most of the pumps, there's a built-in relief, but you just have to make sure that that's right to the edge right there, so that there's no interference when you push that in. Then you can get it sitting flush, and then the screws will go right back over. After that, after it dries, then you go ahead and thread back on the coupling, and you're pretty much ready to start dredging again. The discharge valve, that's the same thing. This is actually, you could call this a check valve, but I call it a discharge valve. Now check valves, they can be expensive to replace, so what I've done is I've made it so you can replace the flapper inside here, the same thing. Remove the 3 screws, dig out the bead of ABS cement, pull out the whole valve, replace the flapper, put the valve back in, put the screws back in, put the little bead of ABS cement on there, let it dry, and you're back in business. And let's see, the O-ring sits right in here, right in the middle. There's a groove around the G valve, and that is where the O-ring goes. O-ring ensures that you'll have a tight seal. This is the nitrile rubber, and this is a specially designed flapper. It's real thick rubber. Every time you close it, open and close it, it clacks. I call it a clack valve, or it's referred to as a clack valve, I suppose. What makes it do that is it's got a hinge right here. That hinge is defined by what I call a cracking groove. And with that groove there, it allows the flapper to open from that point where the groove is. If it didn't have that there, then it would kind of roll open. Like that. It would roll open only so far, and then the rocks would probably get stuck underneath it. But with that groove right there, it opens just like a door. Lets everything through. Now that's thick. Screw it back on. Make sure that the hinge is on the top, and then adjust your angle, put your coupling back on, and you're right back to dredging. Easy. And that is the Model 625 HD 1.5" hand dredge. ABS plastic, real good at suctioning up gold, and moving a lot of water too. If you wanted to just have it around as an auxiliary hand pump, it would be really good for that.